Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the latest installment of NewsNow's Current Events podcast. And we have the Mayor-elect of West Lincoln, Cheryl Ganann. Congratulations on your win, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you. Very exciting.
We've got some interesting things to do, but maybe just give everybody, we'll go back to maybe not the full start, but just about the process of deciding to run for mayor in the first place and how the campaign went, and we'll just work up to today.
Okay, so you just want me to start chatting away to you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, as we were working our way through this past term of council, there were a lot of things that people are aware of that happened in West Lincoln that many residents were not very happy with the light that was shed upon our municipality.
Various concerns, yes.
There were concerns. And so we were probably all the rest of the councillors were busy thinking about, who best would be fit to run for council. I thought about that. I thought about the mayor's leadership and whether I would be able to do that job and do that properly. As time went on, more and more people started asking, will I run for mayor? And that was a huge consideration for me, not because of the West Lincoln portion of that, but whether I would be able to actually fit in and do appropriately the regional portion of that job. So I reached out to many other people. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of work in the community. Mm-hmm. So I have had lots and lots of days filled with a lot of volunteering work. And so I wanted to be able to pick and choose what I could continue to do that way and still know that I would be able to handle what was at the region. So I reached out to many people, one of them being Mayor Sandra Easton in Lincoln, being another female. I thought she would be able to offer.
And runs a tight show.
Runs a really good show. And I really wanted to know from her perspective how she managed, whether she changed the way she managed it from one term to another and was still able to do the job properly at the region. So I'm not the kind of person who can do anything part. I don't jump in a little bit, and I just keep adding on, and I seem to be able to add on a hat and not take anything off. I knew that wasn't going to be reasonable, so there were just a lot of things. So when I started and put my name forward, before I even did that, I reached out to a lot of people that I knew in Ward 1 and Ward 2, because I had taught previously in each of those areas of our municipality, and of course I've lived in Ward 3 for decades. And so I started to put out feelers to people to see what they thought the people
toe in the water
that they knew, not so much about me particularly, but about how they felt the people around them would feel about a female candidate for mayor. It's been quite a while again. We've had two previous, Joan Packham and Katie Trombetta, but it's been another chunk of time, and there are some new people, and generations have grown up, and just to see, whether they felt that people would be responsive to the idea in the first place. And what I was getting back was, well, if it's you, of course we'll support you, and we'll help you. And so that came back readily. And so
do you think the male-female aspect is a key component anymore? Or because what you mentioned there is, if it's you, great. Because it really is, to a large extent, the best candidate.
I think that's what they were saying. I think the message was, male-female, it doesn't matter. But if you are thinking of running, then we're really happy.
Yeah, so that speaks to your support.
I think that was reputation, but you don't know until you start to find out, what people think, and so
you never know until the vote is final.
Absolutely, absolutely,
100%.
Absolutely. The last thing actually I said to my husband before we went over to the Township offices on the 24th was, I hope it's decisive one way or the other. I was really concerned that if it was close, then we'd have more
community divided.
So for me, it was important. And it was also important that people feel engaged. And so consequently, we did a lot of door knocking, and I did a lot of it myself. Yep. I had a lot of helpers. You saw my list, I think.
I did.
And everybody was included. And
our lovely, and I noted before we got going, your page 2 photo there with your long, I thought that was your Christmas list of all the things you wanted from Santa this year, but you probably got what you wanted from Santa this year.
Well, maybe so. Maybe I got something that I'm not sure.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. But actually, people were great. And there were people who were longtime friends that I expected might help. There were people who were friends who used to live in our community and moved away, and they came back to help.
That's
there
nice.
There were people that I used to teach with who helped. There were people I had not known before, who just reached out and said, you know, we want to help you. So, and hence the list. And so it didn't matter whether they did a tiny little bit or a lot, as some people did. I just listed anybody who had any portion and thought, I will never remember to thank everybody that night.
Sure.
Win or lose, I'd either be holding back tears or of one thing, you know, sadness or joy. And so for me, it was important. And again, being a former educator, it was a great prop because it was a great way for me not to have to name names.
Well, and it also is a visual to show what it takes even to run, let alone, you know, do the work and get into the flow.
Well, and you know, the first 2 elections in 2016, it was a by-election. I knocked on every door in Ward 3 by myself, thought that that's the way I should do it, you know. People wanted to talk to me and get to know me. The second time around, 2018, it was only 2 years later, I thought, I'll do the same thing. But the town had grown by then, and it was really, really difficult, but I still had this false sense of I should do it myself. So this time I knew, with looking at the size, you've been to West Lincoln, Mike, you know how big it is. And to be able to do that, I knew I would need help. So the strategy, as you talk about campaigning, was to find somebody who lives in each of the neighborhoods in Smithville, who would walk with me, or several somebodies if it was one of the new big subdivisions. And so I was there, you know, pretty much most of the time, but not always not the person who knocked on the door. But I was available, and they made notes, and I circled back to the people who asked for a door knock and that sort of thing. So it did take all those people.
So you mentioned about, you know, familiarizing yourself with the job and things that need to be done and that kind of thing. So I just want to transition there to some questions. So the reason that we're having this discussion in the first place today is I received a email request from a youngster who goes to Caister Public School, Thomas Boyd, and he was working on a project. He chose the election of this year as a class project. So I thought, I'll see if the mayor-elect wants to sit in on a discussion. I was going to have the youngster come in and talk about the election. I thought, let's just have the mayor-elect right here to answer some questions. And that all went great. And then I got contact this week that over the weekend he got COVID. So he's homesick. And his mom was very apologetic about that. But here we are. So I have some questions submitted from Thomas for his class project. And we're just going to go through them in order. So, number 1, Cheryl, was what jurisdiction does the municipal government have over businesses opening? As there are 4 pizza places within less than 1 square kilometer of each other in Smithville, 3 of which can see each other from their doorstep. Now, how do you want to handle your first political hot potato, so to speak, being pizza in Smithville?
Well, pizza in Smithville has been a hot topic even among the adults, so good that Thomas picked up on that. And first of all, before I start, I'd like to thank Thomas for his questions because it was, and I'm sorry he's not here.
I am too.
Because it would have been great to just have a face-to-face conversation.
Agreed.
But the pizza places in Smithville are really not up to our council in terms of making a decision about whether they can come in or not if it's zoned appropriately. So each of those last couple of pizza places, we had only 2 for a while, and then we had 3, and we, you know, as he said, now we have 5. We could have had 5. We had 4. 1 closed. But if the space that they want to rent is already zoned appropriately for that business to go in, then they don't have to come to the township for us to ask for permission. So the translation of that for grown-ups, they're always asking, why do we have only 1 grocery store? But the downtown portion that used to hold, you know, a grocery store was owned by the head company who actually maintained that property and built a new one and then could rent out that space or sell that space to whomever they wished. So we had, again, no control, and now we consequently have $2 stores where people are wondering why that happens. If they had needed some kind of a permit from the municipality, then it would come, first of all, through our building department, and then eventually, if it couldn't be decided, it would come, if it was a zoning issue in particular, it would come to council.
Yep, the municipality just sets commercial use, and then it's up to some entrepreneur of some sort to risk all our money and
Exactly.
see what works.
And see if their pizza's better than some other pizza. And
Build a better mousetrap. That's right.
And in actual fact, you know, you find people when you're chatting prefer one over another over and over
Sure.
and over again. And so it is important to us, though, to have one that's visible, just the latest one that came in, on the main street. Not so much to capture the people who live in Smithville, but the people who are driving through that are just looking for a place to stop.
Yep.
You know, it's a visible sign that's there, whereas the others are tucked back in plazas a little bit more, and
Yeah.
not quite so visible. So.
And that's why rent's more expensive on main thoroughfares and taxes are higher on main thoroughfares. And
Exactly.
for that very reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Very good.
Great
Thank
question.
you. Number 2. When I read the job description of the head of council in the Municipal Act, Section 225, it was very general. What does Mrs. Ganann feel are the most important parts of her soon-to-be job? I added soon-to-be.
Well, and I'm really impressed that Thomas looked at the Municipal Act.
That's some research right there.
That's a lot of really good work. In fact, that's why I brought along my handy-dandy binder.
You're not going to read all that.
I am not going to read it,
All
and
right.
I'm not going to do anything with it, except for to show Thomas, and hopefully he's watching as well, that nobody knows the entire Municipal Act. Probably the clerk is the closest person to knowing what's there. So sections are pulled out that tell us. And so we will have, this is the one from 2018 to 2022. We will get another one of these in 2 weeks' time, and we will go through it with
Updated
various
amendments
departments, updated amendments. What will not change is things like, you know, the mayor is expected to chair council meetings, the mayor is the signer of bylaws, you know, those kinds of things. All those will stay the same. And those are very traditional. He said they're very general, they really are, and they really are. They're also very general. So what I also think, if he really wants to know what Mrs. Ganann thinks, I think that it's really important for the mayor to feel that their responsibility to the community includes being part of the community. So, for example, being at the farmer's market. Not every time, but people should see you and be able to feel they can come and talk
Just
to you.
engaged, right?
So I was elected, I think, because of my community engagement. The fact that I have been involved, I've been a huge community booster. We attend all functions, John and I, and I want that to continue. I think sitting now in the seat of the mayor is not going to make any difference to what Cheryl Ganann does in the community. Maybe it limits the time, but in terms of being visible and open to people and open to somebody to come up and say, hi, how are you doing? I have a quick question. I think that will be my perspective on being mayor. So.
Very good. Number 3, if West Lincoln takes down a tree, what happens to the tree?
Well, what should happen to the tree is it goes to the landfill at just off of Mud Street and it's called 12, number 12, isn't it? It's on
Regional Road 12.
landfill. But in any case, the trees go there. They are mulched and composted, and then that mulch is turned back to residents at some point in time if they wish. It's always a spring mulching time where it goes out on the website and people can come and get mulch if they wish it. Most ends up there.
Very good. What public utilities are under West Lincoln's jurisdiction?
And that becomes a tricky question because
I think probably if you include regional in there
many of those
would be
things
key for that.
Many of those things are regional. So
Yeah.
the understanding that there are 12 municipalities, most kids get to know that. So to Thomas, you know, most people know that we're a very small population in the region. Most of our tax dollars go to the region. Very little of the tax base stays in West Lincoln. And so we, of course, are responsible for wastewater and sewers and good, clean drinking water. We definitely oversee that all by ourselves. We're connected to the region, and it's done through the region. But we have people in our offices who are responsible for testing that water and making sure. And it passes all standards, and it has for many, many years, you know, very little complaints ever. So that's major. We have a small portion of hydro that we own. So under the umbrella of MPEI, there's this little Penn West section still, and so we have a small percentage of that we still own in conjunction with Lincoln that has a larger percentage than Pelham that has a little bit smaller than ours. So we have some say there, and I sit on that board, as does another councillor. So you know we have input into that. But other than that, you know, we don't have much in terms of utilities. Really, we pay our bills, you know, the same as everybody else pays their bills for hydro and heat.
Very good. Does West Lincoln employ a dog catcher?
Not specifically to us, but we do have an agreement with the Welland Humane Society. So if we have major problems with dogs, or there's an injured animal of some sort,
Like an as-needed basis?
on an as-needed basis. That's right. So.
Very good. The last one. Does West Lincoln have a list of licenses, a list of all the licenses it administers?
So I wasn't
I'm
sure
not
if that
sure.
meant all the people who hold various licenses, or whether it meant the various kinds of licenses. Most of what we administer would be building permits and those
I
kinds
wonder
of
if it
things.
means dog licenses, because he was asking
I
about
wonder if
dogs.
it's connected. So we do, you can buy a dog license through the municipal office. And it might be that he's thinking of, because the former question.
I think what I'm guessing maybe might mean what he might ultimately be wanting to know how many dogs are licensed. Like, what's the I don't say the dog population, because I'm sure there's a
the
lot.
dog population.
Do you know what I mean, though?
Yeah, maybe
but
so.
by asking that, he might want to know how many people get licenses for dogs, that kind of
Right,
thing.
and the percentage. Well, people are supposed to have a license for their dogs.
Yes.
Knocking on doors, I know that many people have multiple dogs. There is a maximum, based under our bylaws. But a lot of people, I was really quite surprised. All my life, I only ever had a dog. And when I started, even in 2016, I was surprised to see 2 dogs or 3 dogs. And so we now have sort of, under our bylaws, we have a maximum, of what you can have inside town. That changes outside of town. If you live in a rural area, you can certainly have more animals. But yes, people are supposed to have a dog license. Yes, we do that. And if specifically, that's what we're looking at.
We've covered pizza. We've covered dog licenses. So maybe we could just, maybe if you could just sort of generally address, because you're not even installed yet. But, what would you like to see materialize over, say, the first 6 months of the new council?
Good question. I think we need to, assuming that we're all get to know each other, and we go through this next framework.
Well, you've got a good mix there, I think.
We've got a great mix. But we have people who have had lots of experience. Like Terry Bell, for example, was 4 years on council. Joanne was 8.
Yeah.
But Shelley's been 2. And so we've got everybody with varying degrees of
But
experience. It's a different.
To save that initial learning curve is
It's a different
great.
starting place, and it should not take as long for people to sort of hit that common ground. So that
No,
we can,
and both Terry and Joanne have been very involved in
Absolutely.
many things. Like,
Absolutely.
despite not being on council for a term, they certainly are not disconnected in any
and they're
way.
not disconnected from the municipality.
No,
so I feel really good in that we have people with varying experience, everybody with some, and everybody concerned about doing what's best for West Lincoln.
Yeah.
So we don't, no hidden agendas, no other thoughts and ideas. Just really, each campaign was based on moving our municipality forward.
Yep.
And so how that will translate, I don't know. There'll be some end of the business in building and planning, for example, will be really a big deal, because we have some things just holding, waiting for the next things. There's some things at the region that we need to wait to have in place when the new regional council's in place, because there are things that they need to do so that we can do some infrastructure kind of work, so that our developers who are just waiting for their final approvals on some things can get going. Like we're sort of caught in limbo. The election was set, obviously, not the best timing for us as we were processing a lot of the applications and things that were coming along. I think there are people chomping at the bit waiting to have final approvals on some things, and we haven't been able to do that. So that, I think the winter term is going to be a whole lot of planning, building, environmental concerns. I think those will be the long meetings and the things that we really have a lot of work to do. Budget, of course, will be coming up, and budget will be tricky. There are a lot of pressures on budget moving forward. Cost of living is a big one.
The one thing the municipality caught up a lot on in the last term was infrastructure. If you go back 2 terms, the bridge issue, there were like 3 bridges that were either condemned, or 2 were closed, and 1 was right on the edge, and they were testing it every month and all that. All those got dealt with now, right?
So those have been dealt with.
Right.
The term before that, the community center was a big issue. Getting back programming running smoothly in that.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes time.
But that's
to
like
build.
crisis management stuff. You really don't have a choice because those things had to be dealt with in those
Exactly.
windows of time.
Exactly.
So at least now you're having some options in terms of which direction you go.
Exactly. We have a new fire hall, of course, that we're still working
Yes.
on. That's being built. So there's still growing and building kinds of projects that need
With
to
the
be-
fire hall, was there reserves for that? Or is that set, or is that's not a new budget item? That's
No,
dealt with.
It was approved in 2020. You know, I mean that's, and then of course things were kind of on hold.
Sure.
Obviously, it was many other things were on hold. But it's
Were you guys able to
forward.
use development charges to help
We
with
were
that?
able to use some development charges, some of the reserves.
Yep. Proper planning, yeah.
So that's all good. We're in pretty good shape for that, and it's in the process of happening. So, but it's for me, when I just look at this first little while, there are a lot of things that need that final push or winding down or before. And so again, when I'm back to budget, for example, the hospital, we still have several years of commitment to that. We're delighted that we had a starting place, that we had some money aside. That's made it easier on taxpayers that we had that 1.2 million to start with. So that's good. But McNally House build, they have requests, and we put that off in the fall. Because it was, we can't commit this, another council. As it turned out, we probably could have, but everybody was weary with going into an election.
Sure.
So I see a lot of things that need to be finished up in the eyes of the public, especially, so they know that okay, that's been dealt with, and yes, we're kind of laying that one to rest, and it will just move ahead appropriately.
Great.
Not anything brand new right now, other than.
And that's good.
Yeah. Like we don't have to
things
jump in and suddenly figure out something that's really
don't
difficult.
create anything. I'm sure enough things will just come to
they'll
you
come. They'll
all on their
come,
own.
Exactly. But as I sit back, and we've not had our training yet. You're right.
Yeah.
Dave technically is still the mayor, and so by the way,
When is your
so
meeting?
the 15th we all take
Mhm.
is the first, and I think most municipalities is the 15th. But our inauguration is not till the 21st. So we are just now looking at working that out with the clerk's office, obviously, as to whether we have two. One, sort of to make sure that there is a council in place, and in case something happened that week, where one ends and the other hasn't quite started yet, and then have another public as part of the inaugural ceremonies. I think people are expecting to see us sworn in. So that's a current topic of conversation, is how best to handle that, right? And our clerk has been away, so we'll find out about that soon.
Good.
And they're very on top. We have great staff who are really very much on top of what needs to be done when and how best to handle things. And so the rest of us now are sort of taking guidance from that. We've received already a timetable of about a dozen meetings coming forward, special council meetings to address certain things. Some where guests are in to address the code of conduct, or council staff relationships, those kinds of things. So that again, before we get into the work that we actually have to do, everybody has the same. And again, I guess I'm back to the fact that Joanne and Terry weren't there for a period of time, and some things have changed. So it's really making sure before we get into things that everybody has that same layer of information.
Great.
And we're not playing catch up in the middle of another issue that we have to deal with. Where
Yeah.
somebody's-
Start with a solid base and away you go.
That's where we're going, I think.
That's it. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming in and being the first. I'm going to try to do a mayor series and get Mayor Sandra and Mayor Jeff in also, but you
Well,
get to be the first.
Their experience, you'll probably get more
They
detail.
get to
from them.
follow in your footsteps. But congratulations and best of luck with your term.
Thank you. I'm hoping to work with them and learn a great deal from each of them. So your next.
Well, they'll be watching
your
this.
next interviews will be.
I'm
much more
sure they'll be
thorough.
watching, so they'll get that message.
Anyway, yeah.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much for watching, everyone.